Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Ford, and we are here for the 18th in about a 25-part series as we are journeying a couple chapters at a time through Holly by Stephen King for what it's worth. Now, I want to start this video. There's going to be a So What Happened portion, a Lit Crit portion, and a Writer's Corner portion of this video, but I need to start this video with a bit of a throat clearing. I need to express the fact that at least I'm trying to keep this series coming to you from a place of neutrality. I am trying to enter this book, each entry, with a fresh mind by giving Stephen King the chance of a new reader. That is, not bringing in the prejudices that I have built up through the previous 17 videos in this chapter. It's almost impossible, guys, because this book, so Stephen King's 1978, I think, through like 1984, Stephen King must have written 60 pages of fiction a day because of the output that he had during that time. I'm talking about the years where he wrote The Shining and It, and I believe Cujo was in there, and it just peppered. There were times where he was publishing 2 books a year, and they weren't small books. They were Stephen King novels. Even during that time, his writing felt more polished than does this. His books felt more comprehensive than does this. And it brings me no joy. Honestly, it brings me no joy to be reading a book with this much ire and fury. There is a series on the channel called Again But Better, which was a book written by a YouTuber, a quote-unquote booktuber, for whatever that's worth. And it was awful. The book itself was miserable. C4 if you want to sponsor me. And this is just as bad as that. I would argue Again But Better was better than this because at least the characters felt more individual than do the characters in this novel. There's a couple characters in this novel, but the novel is populated by 20 people. Probably 20 people, more than 20 people have speaking roles, but probably 20 people that you're expected to remember by name. Okay? So, anyway, so what happened in this pair of chapters? Roddy is cooking dinner and he pauses to take Bonnie her Diet Coke, still sealed. She opens it listening for the pop and fizz. She hears it and starts drinking. But Roddy spiked the bottle with a hypodermic and glued over the hole. This is something I wonder how easy this is to do. This is something that I wonder if it is believable that Roddy had that done. It seems like it would be. I don't know how difficult it would be, but I imagine it would be difficult to pull off and still. I don't know. It's just interesting. I'm not doubting Stephen King's writing here. I'm not doubting that it's possible. I'm not doubting that perhaps he even tried it. It is just one of these things that sort of momentarily makes me wonder how easy or hard this is to do. Bonnie goes down. Then Roddy gets her up on the operating table with a lot of effort and a lot of pain. He straps her down and then strips her down. Cut to Holly saying her prayers when Bonnie's ex's roommate calls just to tell her that Bonnie was a Christmas elf one time. That's super relevant. It's super important. And it is super, super not something that Stephen King needed just to move the novel along. Right? Anyway, Holly calls Keisha to confirm that Bonnie was a Christmas elf one time, because that's super important. Confirmed. Barbara's mom calls Holly and tells her about Barbara and Olivia and how Olivia says she's going to die. She doesn't want to die alone in the hospital. She wants to die in her house, etc. Holly miraculously has a missing text message from Barbara. Holly had sent Barbara a text message with a photo saying, "Do you remember this guy?" Barbara returned the text message saying which one, and it was a picture of Carrie from the bowling alley, but it leads us on to believe that there is another which one that she remembers. So there's some bad writing in here. And here's where I want to start. Well, bad writing isn't necessarily the right term for it, but it's not good. Here we have, from the conclusion of the first chapter in these two chapters, where Roddy is planting Bonnie, Holly, Emmy, Barbie, planting Bonnie on the table. 5 minutes later, he punches the code on the cell door, thinking that if she can put up a fight after a double dose of sedative, she's Supergirl. He would still like Emily to be standing by with the gun, but she's currently not capable of getting down the basement stairs. It would be nice to have an elevator, but they've never even discussed it. How would they explain the cell at the end of the basement to the workmen or the wood chipper? There's no problem. Bonnie Doll isn't Supergirl, she's out cold. Roddy takes her arms and drags her across the basement to the small door beside his racked wall of tools. Inside the next room, a 50-gallon plastic bag hangs limp from the end of the wood chipper's ejector hose. In the middle of the room is an operating table. There are more tools in here, but these are a lab and surgical variety. How is he going to explain the operating table to the workmen? Now, I understand that you say, but it's in a different room. He had to go through a door into that room. The door into that room is where the wood chipper is, because in the other room is a bag laid limply at the end of the wood chipper. Now, maybe that's the exit of the wood chipper and not the entrance to the wood chipper. I'm going to be very honest with you, I haven't dealt with a whole lot of wood chippers in my life, but I imagine that it would be fairly easy to cover up just the back half of a wood chipper. Why also would the loading end of the wood chipper be in a different room than your operating table, but the same room as your cell? So you are keeping the person in the room with the loading end of the wood chipper, dragging them into a different room to cut them open, dragging them back into the first room in order to wood chip them. Now, aside from this probably being an OSHA violation, it's very, very inconvenient. It just... What, Stephen King? What? Number 2. On page 327, here's one thing that bothers me. Okay. All of the people in this novel kind of sound the same. They speak the same. They use similar verbiage. The same nomenclature comes out of their mouth. Nothing wild. And, okay, that's fine. Except for a couple different characters. Number 1, Bonnie's ex's roommate sounds like a stoner. Okay, fine. Stephen King knows how a stoner sounds. Maybe it's a bit stereotypical, but Stephen King knows how a stoner sounds. Now, if you want to talk about stereotypes, let's get into Keisha. Keisha laughs. Not me. I like to read late when the house is quiet. What's up, pussycat? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Why oh, why does Keisha sound... Look, Stephen King knows black people, right? Far out. That's why she sounds like a black person from a 1970s sitcom. There was a little bit of this in Chuck Palahniuk's Adjustment Day, where it was like, okay, you've got one black character in the mix, and of course, we have to use all of the verbiage that we learned from watching 1970s sitcoms, because that's how black people sound, right? So, I mean, here's so, and maybe this is more of in the writer's corner portion, but I think I can't not talk about it now. So, one of the ways that writers will sort of hint at characters without description is by using, for example, hair. So, if you don't want to just come out and say that a character is black, because how do you do it without sounding like you're pointing out, oh, this is my black guy? How do you do it without waxing poetic about the beautiful nature of his ebony skin, right? And we got that earlier in this novel with Stephen King, where he was describing it might have been Keisha, as if he was writing poetry to his ebony sweetheart in middle school, right? That's sort of the way that that's sort of the way it comes across when you are not just stating the fact, oh, well, this character's black, but when you're stating the fact, oh, well, this character's black, it sounds like you're pointing out your token. So what Stephen... One of the ways that you do that with writing without saying those things is noting the color of a person's hair. Very few white people have black hair. So if you comment on the color of a person's hair, a reader can read into that whatever they want. Now, for me, from a reading standpoint, I don't care the race of a character. Once that person is on the page, you'll populate it in your mind however you're going to do it. In fact, I kind of like it when an author doesn't go out of their way to say, well, this character is black, brown, white, polka dot, purple, any of that stuff, because if you are a reader who is black, you get to populate that book with whatever characters you want. Instead, so in the same way that a writer might mention the color of a person's hair, and is kind of a small hint, also, you can demarcate things with dialogue and not telling your reader certain things about a character. If a character's dialogue reads with a certain dialect, you will populate them differently in your mind without having to be told, well, Todd was from Louisiana, right? Stephen King goes ahead and goes overboard and gives us all of it. I'm just this also on 327. In fact, the first. Wait a minute. What am I doing here? So, I even did this wrong. I did this in the wrong order because I have so many notes from the same page. So that little bit of dialogue that I read is not the most egregious example on this page. Up at the top, or maybe some of them got champagne. Faculty, they got to represent. Stephen, what are you doing, buddy? They got to represent. Stephen, what are you doing? Make her a normal person. You don't have to throw all of the language that you feel you've seen in the movies onto the page and just say that proves, oh, I'm not a racist. Right? Just write regular people. Make her say regular stuff. Or make all of their dialogues just a little bit different. Instead, you've got this sore thumb sticking out, which happens to be your black character. The very next paragraph after that we get to throw away the detective novel theme here. Holly can feel something warm working up her back from the base of her spine to the nape of her neck. There's still nothing real here, but she's rarely had a stronger intuition. Cool. So we're not going with the detective work. We're just going to go on intuitions. Now, most detective stories have a bit of intuition worked in. That is what makes their main character their main character. Normally, in my experience, and I don't read a whole lot of detective work, detective fiction. Normally, the intuition is to investigate something. Now, you could say, technically, this intuition is leading Holly on an investigation. This intuition is about a conclusion. This is not investigation. This intuition is clearly and explicitly conclusion. So we can just throw the genre out the window. Holly's right, and that's what matters. Now, the one note that I have for the writer's corner here. Barbara's mother, I don't remember her name. Barbara's mother calls Holly to tell her. Barbara's mother calls Holly to tell Holly Barbara will not be able to be reached because Barbara is attending to Olivia as Olivia is planning, or probably not planning to die, but plans to die at home, which will be time consuming for Barbara. Okay. That conversation has to happen so that Holly cannot reach Barbara when Barbara sends her the text message asking which person in the picture does she remember. Now, this is very messy from a character standpoint for our readers, because Barbara's mother has not played a role in this novel up to this point. Okay. It's kind of realistic because we don't always have interactions with the main characters in our own lives. So it's kind of realistic. There's some verisimilitude there. But it is a roadblock thrown up to be a plot device. So it's good with it's realistic, but verisimilitude is not always good. It's also off the beaten path, but unpredictability is only good insofar as it is something that feels natural in the book. I would argue that this feels very unnatural in this place because it's sandwiched up so close to Holly having missed that text message from Barbara. So, look, I understand that feels like nitpicking, but I think we're at the point in the novel now where everything has to feel good, has to feel smooth, has to feel as if it is necessary to the story because we're inching so close to the end. This pair of chapters ends on page 331. The novel ends roughly 100 pages later. So the novel at this point should feel on cruise control. And here's the terrible thing about a writer's job. When a story feels on cruise control, that's actually the hardest place to write. Because what you're saying is that the author's hand has to completely disappear in that time and space. It has to be such good writing that you, the author, are invisible. That is hard to do. That is why little coincidences can't happen smashed up against each other. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what I do on the channel, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about. So consider hitting the subscribe button and sticking around for more. I hope to have you back for the next video.